what's good? My name is Axotol, and today, my friends, I want to talk about some things that I would like to see changed in the base game after the Void update drops. A quick note, and listen well now, the description has timestamps for each rarity. Good. Now some items need fixes more than others, and some of the items I'm going to mention might not need any changes to begin with. I may have no idea what I'm talking about and might make the most OP item in the game without knowing it. I don't know, these are just my own thoughts and I want to get them out there. Now I won't be talking about survivor recommendations, as I would like to have their own series on that. I think that a growing game needs more than chest adding DLC items. The base game will always need some love and attention. Since I have a total of 1 HTML coding class from 8th grade worth of experience, I have absolutely no idea of how much I am about to suggest is actually possible. On that note, let's get started. Starting with white items, in general most are totally fine. However, there are a lot that could use minor tweaks to make them feel more impactful. Now, while trying to write this part of the script, armor plate was the first item I was going to talk about. It's actually slightly better than I gave it credit for. The item reduces all incoming damage by 5 plus 5 per stack. Unfortunately, it's only good against burn damage, not all damage over time. After researching a bit about damage over time, burn is capped at 1% of the survivor's max HP per tick, I believe, while bleed is dependent on the monster's damage. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I'm getting from the wiki. Bleed skill is better than burn. I believe that's what it's trying to say. If I had 1000 max HP, and if I got hit by a burning elite, I would take 10 HP of damage per tick from one instance of burn. Burn does stack. 2 armor plates, and that damage goes straight down to 1. I'm not 100% if the math is correct, but that's the impression I'm getting from it. If any changes are needed to be made, they can make it reduce damage by 1% and 1% per stack. This would make it so that it would be much better in general later on in the game and maybe help against the one-shot problem. But as of now, I think it's totally fine where it is. Just a little underwhelming. The next white item is Bison Steak. This item is garbage. Max HP doesn't amount to much later on in the game, and the efficiency isn't as good as Infusion. There's 2 things that they can do to make it worth acknowledging. The first is to revert the change entirely and then nerf the effect, and the second is to make it a percentage scaling like Bitterroot from the first game. I don't know what's more balanced, but right now I hate this item. Now, Bungus is fine as an item. However, if they changed the fact that getting hit deactivated the effect, it would be much better. As of right now, if you get hit by a stone golem and I think lesser monsters attacks, you get that little knockback, bye-bye fungus effect. It's gone. Otherwise, it's in an okay spot. I will mention this item later on when I get to Rose Buckler, but keep that in mind. Ah, yes. The infamous personal shield generator. I think this item is already balanced as it is. It's the interaction with shields that's the issue here. One of the mods I have installed in the game is Starstorm 2, and they have an item that on kill restores 10% of your max shields. That solves everything about shields without breaking the game. If you don't want to go down that route, you can also make it to where when you're sprinting, it restores your shields slightly. And that could scale off of move speed. But normally I don't like adding one thing to fix an issue, but Risk of Rain 2 is friendly to that concept. Dead by Daylight suffers from this problem. If someone is camping you, the devs will just slap a perk down that counters that playstyle. If the killer doesn't do that, congratulations, you have a wasted perk slot that does absolutely nothing. Ukulele is amazing on Commando because it gives him AoE and increases his hit potency. Makes him immensely stronger with just one item. Having an item that replenishes shields makes every shield item worth having. It takes a decent concept that has an unchangeable flaw and fixes it. I say unchangeable because unless they rework shields from the ground up, this issue will always persist. So adding an item that replenishes shields would be very much appreciated. So Sticky Bomb and Stun Grenade. These 2 items, in my opinion, suffer from the same thing. They both have a decent effect that takes way too long to get going. A simple change would be 10%, maybe 20% chance by base, and 5% per stack. Stun Grenades stack multiplicatively, so the math isn't just adding. I think this is the start of the right direction. Specifically with Sticky Bomb, it gets super outclassed by Tri-Tip Dagger, so making it easier to apply the effect would counteract the infinite damage of Tri-Tip. And Stun Grenade just needs that extra oomph to it. It could also count as a debuff and it would be just fine as it is. Alright, moving on to green items. we have Deathmark. Deathmark is fine, but it lacks consistency. You need 4 debuffs in order to make it work. So let's count the items that can proc it. Tri-tip, Gasoline, Pajaros if it even counts, which I don't think it does, Runalds, and Chronobobble. Don't forget Deathmark itself. If you don't have the item, you can't proc the debuff. That's a no-brainer. Now there are red items and boss items that can proc it too, but those are super rare and not worth taking into account because they don't have the consistency that we're looking for. Out of all of those items, there are only 2 that you can guarantee it will be put on an enemy. That's Tri-tip and Chronobobble. So what is the fix for this? Instead of 4 debuffs, make it 3. A little ambitious, but hear me out. We use Commando as the prime example. Unless you have Phase Round and his grenade, which I don't recommend, he can't proc Runalds. He has to rely on Bleed, which is easy for him, and Chronobobble, which is guaranteed for everybody. Gasoline, which is mostly enemy reliant, and he still needs another debuff. Runalds would work here, but it doesn't get to choose where it procs. If Stun Grenade counted as a debuff, then it would be good for helping Deathmark. Now what about the survivors with debuffs? Now the characters vary in terms of strength. I mean, we're gonna compare Artificer to Rex for crying out loud, and those two are on opposite ends of the scale. But Artificer and Acrid both need buffs. While this would be an indirect buff, they need the damage to do their job. It would also be much easier for them to apply it if they didn't need the Bleed or Shattering Justice or a boss item. Rex on the other hand is just broken, so hey, whatever, he gets stronger, yay, nothing to it. As of right now, it's already hard to proc Deathmark and bad to stack, especially if you get within the first loop. Of course, if our Hoppu gods do make it easier to proc, then the damage bonus should be nerfed a tiny bit, if that, maybe 30%. Pajaro and Runalds, while I like the change they did to it, it got nerfed into the ground. Now, stay with me now. Let's be honest, they're kinda not worth stacking anymore, or printing, or however you want to think about it. I like the damage threshold, I think it's a great concept. The cooldown is what's holding it back by quite a bit. So, if they made it to where each stack of either of the bands reduced the cooldown by half a second, it would be a great starting point. You would need 20 bands total to get 0 cooldown. You can even make it so that the cooldown can't go lower than half a second. They can balance the size and damage and everything else the way they see fit after the change. Or not, it's their game, not mine, so do it, you won't Hoppu. I only say reduce the cooldown because 10 seconds is longer than most abilities cooldown to begin with, especially the ones that can proc it on their own. But what do I know, right? I'm not that good at the game, so yeah. Old War Stealth Kit. Oh boy, how the mighty has fallen. It got nerfed twice in one patch and now sucks. Before, the item would turn you invis when you took any kind of damage. The wiki says 1% of max HP and shields gone means 1% chance to turn you invis. Now it's guaranteed when you fall below 25% max HP and has a cooldown of 30 seconds. The best thing they can do is change the damage threshold to 50%. 25 is way too low at any stage of the game. If you're pre-loop, what are you doing? It's time to get good or it's just lag. Most of the time it's lag. Trust me, I'm on the internet, no cap, as the youngsters say. If you're stage 10, you probably just got hit by an elite and you're going to die anyway. That's just how I see it. 50% seems nice, and I think the cooldown is also fair. Maybe reduce it because the invis nerfs. Now, Rose Buckler is an interesting item. I think it's kinda underrated, but whatever. I think if you were standing still, the effect could activate as well as when sprinting. That way, Fungus is more, quote, viable, end quote. As well, for Engineer, it would help his turrets to not get one shot post stage 10, which is an issue that will happen. Now, that may be too potent and make the item much better than his walking turrets already, but whatever. We'll get to Engineer when the time comes, so look out for that video. Alright, we finished green items. Sweet, now on to the reds. They are either so strong or absolutely useless to the point that you'll get yourself killed if you pick it up. But Alien Head needs a buff. Out of all the cooldown related items, it is the worst one, and it's a red. That hurts it a lot. Most cooldowns already have low timers on them, making it 50% by base and stack by 50% would make it worth the effort to pick up. I should mention that it stacks multiplicatively, not additive. This means that 2 stacks don't give you 100% cooldown. This at least makes it viable with the other two, those being Bandolier and Brain Stocks. Aegis. Aegis is very underwhelming, but it could be very unique and good with 2 changes. As of right now, it gets outclassed by a white item, Topaz Brooch. Now, switching the effects with Topaz Brooch doesn't fix the problem, it actually makes it much worse. But if you were to make it where healing gets increased by X%, and healing would now affect shields at X% value of total healing done, then the item just got a whole lot more interesting, and in my opinion is worth a red color status. This is just an idea, and can get out of hand very quickly, but it cannot exceed Nature Rack. The values I have in mind are no more than 20%. On top of giving the barrier, this change would make it feel like it is the defensive item for red tier, and a change that is easily balanced in my opinion. Plus, it helps out with the shield situation. Think of the shield passive as more of a shield regen than actual restoration. The green item's job is to replenish that. Next up on the list is headset. Stompers, Mario wannabe, whatever you want to call it. It sucks. And that comes down to consistency. The jump only works for your base jump, not Hopu feathers. When you use the active, the jump goes away entirely. I like that they made it activatable, however it's the jump that's the issue, not the damage part. The damage part could use a buff, sure, but they either need to make the jump consistent or get rid of it altogether. Another change that they can make is have the jump controllable like the jetpack from the first game. The longer you hold the button down, the higher up you go. Up to the max, of course. The item is way too clunky and annoying to use, and then the damage is lackluster at best. Now, the only thing bad of Wake of Vultures is the shield you're going to have. Trust me, you will get a shield. If we add in the item I recommended earlier in the video, this no longer becomes a problem. Easiest fix to every shield in the game, honestly. That item needs to be green though, I cannot stress that enough. You cannot rely on a red item to fix an issue that is as prevalent as the shield's issue. In this game at least, you can. Now the Aegis proposal is a red item, but the goal was to add a strong effect to shields already, not to fix the issue. Frost Relic is in an interesting spot. I think that it's fine, but it needs some fine tuning. The biggest issue is that it can actually kill you. If you hit the pots later on in the game, you're dead. So, the obvious answer to the Frost Relic is to make it not hit the pots. But I don't think that's actually possible. So we could remove the pots, which is an interesting idea because they honestly don't do much to monsters late game. But that will probably leave maps a bit emptier than they already feel, which isn't really a problem at all, but I digress. If you want to make the effect of Frost Relic stronger, add a glacial debuff to every attack. This helps with Death Mark, by the way. But the biggest issue is the pots blowing you up rather than the item's effect itself. The last red item is Desk Plant. I think everything about it is fine, but it could be better. The healing is nice, but it's a bit boring, honestly. The effect it could give could be way more interesting than just healing. On top of healing, it could give attack speed, or crit chance, or extra damage. But we can get a bit feistier and say it leaves a damaging zone instead. It could apply one of Rex's debuffs to enemies in the zone. It could make the first enemy that touches it attack another enemy for a period of time. There are literally infinite things that could have been in place, but instead they chose healing, which is fine, I guess, just boring. Alright, for boss items, there isn't much to go on about. Most of them are solid in their own right, however, there are 2 that feel lackluster. The first is Charge Perforator. This item is only bad because of when you can get it, not what it does. By the time you get to the point where this item can exist, you're already one-shotting pretty much everything. So if this item procs, we can make it so that it will chain to another target. 1 extra target per stack, or we can have it act like a magnet. Hitting an enemy will pull another one in that direction of the first enemy hit but doesn't do damage. We can also make it to where the damage isn't just 1 target but a small AoE like Artificer's Plasma Bolts. So it pulls 2 enemies together and then hits both with the Lightning Bolt, which I feel is much better for crowd control. Planula is garbage most of the time. If the amount of healing was doubled by base, then maybe it'll be better, but why not have a chance that the survivor teleports away from an enemy attack and not take the damage? Parents already teleport all over the place, and that's their only gimmick. The one thing I can think of is that during a teleporter, or when you spawn into the map, have that giant praise the sun move the grandparents use and damage enemies. Very little damage, I should say, but enough to kill basic mobs like non-elite beetles in like 30 seconds. This would be across the whole map from the start or when the teleporter activates. I think this is a cool idea. I don't know how broken it can get. It would really depend on the overall damage it does per second and whether or not it gave debuffs to the enemies. But it's a lot better than heal HP per hit taken, right? Lunar items. Some of them are absolute garbage, but that's why I'm here. So why not, right? There are a few that desperately need a change. Brittle Crown, for instance, is actually a solid item, but I don't think it needs a change. I just think that it is irrelevant most of the time. The only thing I would change is an increase in the chance of proccing, if that, but as of right now, I think it's totally fine where it is. Corpse Bloom. The first thing they need to do is change the color on the text in game, because at first glance it looks like there isn't any downside at all. Now for the effect, we can keep the healing over time, but it should heal at plus 50% more instead of 100%, and I can't decide if it should stack or not. But, and this is where it gets interesting, X% of damage taken is instead applied over time, as well as being true damage, for lack of a better term. This means that the damage over time won't be affected by armor and can't be blocked by teddy bears or the repulsion armor plate. You know, that kind of thing. The percent of damage converted can stack, but the healing per second also gets smaller. It can start at 20% as a random number per second and get smaller per stack. Put into League of Legends terms, it's a version of Death's Dance. There's also an item like this in Starstorm 2 for Risk of Rain 2, and they are indeed the inspiration for a Corpse Bloom changes. On paper, this sounds very good, but the numbers need to be balanced so that it's possible to out-heal some of the damage and not all of the damage taken. We can transition this item from being a healing item to an anti-burst defensive item. It can become very broken for better or worse, but it does indeed build the one-shot protection item, which we don't have except teddy bears. Transcendence will be just fine if we implement the other shield ideas that were mentioned during the other parts of the video. Its effect is amazing if shields weren't so bad, so not much to talk about here. Effigy of Grief is an interesting concept. The best thing I can think of here is that you can have it act like a pocket-shaped glass, or maybe a Clover Purity kind of thing going on. If we go the shaped glass route, you can deal double damage, but take triple damage from enemies while it's activated. The effect won't stack with multiple activations, it just prolongs the duration. Something along those lines I think is decent. If we go the Clover Purity route, and I'm a bigger fan of this one, it can say something like, while active, you are lucky. The hidden stack of +1 luck, right? While inactive, you are very unlucky. It's going to have a hidden stack of -2 luck. This means that when you activate it, you get that extra luck, the extra clover, but when it's not activated, congratulations, you have -2 luck. The cooldown can be a minute, duration can be 10 seconds. Now, I don't think that this is a problem because Tonic has the same kind of idea going on. It can't be broken any more than Tonic can with gestures and fuel cells. I really like this idea quite a bit, especially since luck will be harder to come by in general. As they add more red items, Clover will be more valuable because it will be more rare. If we add an equipment that increases luck, now there is a second source of luck, an easier one, but with a price. It won't diminish the value of Clover at all because the investment needed to make this new effigy work at max efficiency is much higher than just having one Clover. And since an equipment, it can be removed entirely by switching it out when needed. I am very much a fan of this idea. Finally, we get to our last category for the video, the equipment. Most of them are just fine. Nothing can really compare to a capacitor, and it doesn't have to be that way. There are two things that need drastic changes though, in my opinion. The first is Blast Shower. Now, I never use this item with the equipment combo, so I don't know how OP that could be. In theory, that sounds like a janky captain passive, but as of right now, it's the worst equipment unless you're trying to get the Kajaro Runald resets. I think they should scrap the cleanse debuff idea entirely for multiple reasons. The first being that if we do implement the ban changes that I suggested, the niche use of the Blast Shower becomes less potent and there's less of a reason to use it for that purpose. The second effect is to remove nearby projectiles. I don't know if it's just me, but the range is too nearby for my taste. So the best fix to this item is to simply increase the radius at which it deletes projectiles. They can keep it the same and increase the range and it would be better, but that's still not good enough in my opinion. The other idea I had for it is to change it to where you can summon a wall. I don't know how hard that would be to implement into the game, but Artificer has this mechanic already, or it's very similar. Again, I don't know how much of this is possible to do, but it seems fairly possible. Of course, the wall would disappear over time, but it would block enemy projectiles from the direction and change the enemy's pathing. I don't really know what to do with this item, but hey, it definitely needs some love. The other one is Eccentric Vase. This item also doesn't do much. On top of that, it's fairly difficult to unlock to begin with, and then you get this thing. That's a no from me, man. In case you don't know how to get it, you need to beat Aurelianite on the first phase. And while that's not the end of the world in terms of difficulty, they could make the item much more interesting. Personally, I think that for an enemy this unique, it should reflect the enemy that it unlocks off of. The Halcyon Seed isn't the best boss item, but it's still fun. Moving 1,000 meters away isn't fun in my opinion. Yes, it has a niche, but I would rather it be different entirely because it doesn't do anything. So, mechanics unique to Aurelianite are the gold pillars and its invincibility, and his multi-layered ground attack. We can have the item act like the crowdfunder and at a cost of a chest or two, give the player invincibility for a little bit. In my opinion, this is pretty cool, but it's too close to Jade Elephant. So, what we could do is the giant ground spike move. This one is simpler, but much more flashy. It shouldn't have a gold value attached to it, and it could hit like the 5 closest enemies instead of being a straight line. The goal for this item is to make it reflect the achievement better than it already does. Wow, that was a lot more things than I thought it would be, and I still could talk about other things like the aspects and the lunar coins and survivors, but those will be in another video. And on that note, my name has been Axotol. This has been items I would like to see rework in Risk of Rain 2. Make sure you drink some water, and I will be here when you tune in next time. Now get some sleep.